No one really knows how the brain works. Remember, psychology isn't just about the mind. Psychology is the study of mental processes and human behavior.
I'm quite interested in these concepts that you might have developed throughout your career. Do you mind sharing some?
Get into it.
Psychologist Daniel Dymonde has helped some of the world's top tennis stars, elite golfers, and Olympians.
One of the great myths around athletes and high-performance professionals is that there's this amazing confidence in them, which is BS. It's just not true. And so we've got to, rather than trying to stop, suppress, avoid, shut down, win the battle of the mind, we've actually got to change our relationship there and expand our capacity.
Can you give us the 3 biggest hitters to help you improve your mindset?
So first is clarity of what your mindset actually is, then what you're doing to connect with it, and the third one is...
Are you familiar with like the concept and the idea of choking?
I'll talk about 2 things. Number 1, we're choking under pressure. It can either be a very slow and then sudden rise of stress or anxiety. And then the second part to what you described is the pressure of expectations.
So how do we stop that from happening?
Okay, right. I'll go into a bit more detail now.
This is life just waiting for you. This is life just waiting for you. This is life just waiting for you.
All right, so when I did a little bit of a call out from our listeners for questions, it was a bit of a mouthful saying high performance sports psychologist. But what is a high performance sports psychologist actually do?
Sure. So I mean, I don't know if we call ourselves high performance sports psychs. We call ourselves like performance and sports psychs. There's an endorsement to be a sports psychologist. Anyone can call themselves a sports psychologist if they're a psychologist. It's not a protected term. But if you're a sports psychologist or performance psychologist, you're working with athletes and high performers. So, and that can be anyone who calls themselves an athlete or identifies themselves as an athlete or high performer in any part of their life. It could be a 14-year-old tennis player who's looking to overcome some nerves and anxiety or confidence. It can be an Olympian or a professional soccer player, footy player, golfer. Yeah. And then it extends also to business as well, and even medical professionals.
Yeah.
Anyone who considers themselves kind of where performance is important to them. Yeah.
Yep. And how long have you been doing this for?
So I have been a psych since 2011. So April 2011, I think it was, when I first got my tick. Yep. You can now go and look after people's mental health, and then obviously their performance as well. So what's that, 15, 16 years now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what actually got you into it? Because I mean, working with someone's mind, what kind of drew you to that field?
So I kind of fell into it, but also when I realised there was something called sports psychology out there, I dove in. If I go back from UK, and I was a pretty average student at school. Happy to go this far back.
Yeah,
sure. So
100%.
I was a pretty average student at school, and I didn't really know what to do after school. Loads of people are like that, I guess. And I took a gap year and came over to Australia. And just before that, I realised the thing I really wanted to do was something in sport, because that's what my dad realised, and I realised that, okay, this is the thing that sort of really interests me. Economics didn't, politics didn't, French, the classics, all the typical maths didn't, sciences, they didn't really took on my brain. And then, so I thought I'd get into sports science, came here. I can't remember where, but I remember being in a house in Glen Waverley with one of the teachers, because I was a gap tutor at the time. And I remember saying, I want to be a sports psychologist to him. I can't remember exactly how that came about, or I realised there was sort of something mental or psychological about sport. Ended up going to do my degree in Exeter in UK and did sports science. And again, that was okay. But when I got into the sports psychology classes, that's when my dad kind of describes it as all the lights in my brain started to wake up or light up. And I did my thesis in it. I did something back then. It was in 2005. I did it in sport and self-determination theory. It wasn't really a big thing back then. Now, self-determination theory, which is like a motivational, we can talk about it if we like, which is now a big motivational kind of theory in sport. I did my thesis then, realised I wanted to become a sports psych. That's what it was, but there was no avenue in England. You could do a master's in sports science and call yourself a psych, but I was like, this isn't really, if I'm going to be working one-on-one with humans, I need to be properly qualified here. So I ended up coming back to Australia to do a psych degree up in University of Queensland, and got really interested in psychology in general. And then from there, did my master's in sports psych. So it was kind of like, it just made sense to me, to my brain. Psychology and sport made sense. And then psychology started to make sense to me about how humans operate, how they behave, why they behave the way they do, and then how and why they think as well. Remember, psychology isn't just about the mind. Psychology is the study of mental processes and human behavior. And I think that's where people kind of forget, and then they go, oh, you're going to see a shrink because there's something wrong with your mind. Actually, it's also about human behavior, which is where performance also really lends itself to.
And in regards to what you're doing now after 16 years, who do you work with now, and how does that all work?
Yeah, so now I work, I'm so lucky, I'm the head psych at the Victorian Institute of Sport. So I have a team of 8 other psychs, actually. Yeah, 8 other psychs. Really proud of the team that we've created there. So there's the VIS, that's Olympian work, Paralympian work as well. And I work with Golf Australia as well, with their program down here as the Victorian sort of golf psychologist, if you like. And actually also work with the AFL umpires as well. Started that this year or end of last year. And then I have a private practice where I see lots of professionals, weekend warriors, medical doctors, business professionals as well. And I did 4 or 5 years, 5 years maybe, in AFL as well. Yeah. And that took a while. Like that was, I always joke to some of the psychs who are at the VIS now, who we hired maybe 2 3 years out. It took me about 8 years, I think, before I got a professional or elite sport gig. It wasn't until about 2016 where I think sports psych, performance psychology became more mainstream. I just remember something about the Rio Olympics, that a lot more talk and chatter in the media was around sports psych, and that athletes were seeing psychologists, and then it started to just snowball from there. Now it's in a high demand. I would say, like sports psychology, we're in a kind of golden era at the moment. Yeah.
Obviously, like a lot of work you've had to do to get to this point where you are right now. And big organizations, what are they actually looking for in something like what you're doing? What's the characteristics? What's the qualities? Because these organizations you're labeling off are amazing and are huge. And what is it about you that attracted them?
And what about me?
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Stumped.
Yeah.
Stumped.
Okay. Well, it's about me. So I always preface that there's a bit of luck involved and timing. I think I can articulate psychology and psychological principles pretty well, whether it's through analogies, whether it's through you're talking about quite complex theories in a pretty simple way. What I don't know why me, if I'm really honest. I think I'm pretty good at what I do. And yeah, I'd say probably my ability to sort of take psychological theories and frameworks and be able to translate them into something applicable for teams, organizations.
Do you find it really hard, like obviously knowing how the brain works and being able to deconstruct if a client comes in, do you find it hard then analysing yourself in that way?
Yeah, so no one really knows how the brain works. We've got some theories, but there's a lot we need to discover still. But we're still understanding it, and it seems like some things tend to work in terms of when we look at the brain, making certain interventions tend to work better than others. So first of all, when I'm off the clock, I don't analyse people. I'm a human, and most psychs are like that too, because you've actually got to do some quite deep thinking when you're a psychologist listening to the athlete or client on the other side of the room from you, and there's a lot of thinking and processing that's going on as a psych. People talking about the duck, swimming like with their legs underwater but looking pretty calm on top. So there's that. But then when you talk about myself and doing some psychoanalytical work or myself or analysis on my work, look, I probably don't do that much. I probably am like most humans. I ruminate at times. I worry at other times. Sometimes I'm pretty present. I'm my nature. This isn't actually true. I think I've done a lot of work to stay pretty composed and calm. Some people talk to me at work and say, "Oh, you're very contained," as in like I don't show my, play my cards close to my chest. But actually, outside of work, I'm pretty silly. I'm a very light-hearted person. I don't take things too seriously, and I don't actually also. I bring that into session as well. I think that's really important. So yeah, there was one thing I was going to say, but it seems it'll come back to me in a second. Yeah.
So when you're actually in a session with a client, an athlete, what's going through your head? How would you play it all out? So if you were to be in a session with me and I'm having issues with, say, believing in myself, what would you be thinking about and how to help me?
Yeah, right. So if that's the way that you'd articulate that, if that's the way you'd talk about, like, I'm really having struggled believing in myself, I want to know what that looks like as well. Like, it looks different for different people. Some people who don't believe in themselves work incredibly hard. Some people avoid anything that might challenge them. Other people might just give in. So I want to know a bit more about what does that actually look like? How does that play out? And what are the consequences of that? That's a big part of my work. I'm trying to understand how it actually looks and plays out in your life as one part of many. Clearly, the other part of this is understanding a lot about the background and history, right? So in psychology, we kind of do things called formulations or conceptualizations. I won't get too technical, but a formulation can look like what are the factors about you that we can't change? It's called predisposing factors. The factors that you're bringing into the session that we can't do anything about, but it's about your history. We need to know that. We need to know, obviously, what's perpetuating or maintaining the issue at the moment as well. It's called 5 Ps, so predisposing, perpetuating. And then we get into like, what's the pattern or the precipitating factors? So what's happening just before you start not to believe in yourself, right? What are the factors going on there? And then what are the protective factors to help you? And then what's the prognosis, the outcome? So we might start to be as scientific as we possibly can and use these kind of formulations or conceptualizations to be able to try and understand those sorts of things. So, but for me, I think when I'm talking with athletes and anyone in performance, I want to know, because ultimately with performance is rooted in ultimate behavior. We want to create behavior change. I want to know what does the lack of belief look like? And then if you want to get really into it, I want to know what you get out of it. I want to know what do you get as a reward for that behavior. So if you try really hard as a response or reaction to your lack of belief, I want to know what's the reward you get. I want to know what the reward you get if you surrender to that lack of belief or if you avoid it, because that starts to start to understand patterns.
So is there a lot about the patterns? And I want to know, like, if you figure out an issue, you found the core of it all, are you then implementing strategies for that person? What's the next step after that?
Yeah, so once you've done your formulation and intake and try to understand as much about the human as possible, then you'd start to do psychoeducation. Big part of what I do is that, and that's really key, because that, if you do that really well and then sort of link that into your client's experience, that can start to turn light bulbs on in their head. I get really excited when someone says that hit really hard, that hit home, or that hit really hard in a good way, because then like you've got some resonance there, something really cool is happening. from there, you'd start to create, the intervention. So what are the things we've got to do to actually create change? This is what you are, or not what this is what you're currently experiencing. And then we've got to figure out what are the psych frameworks we can put in to actually create a change. And we've got to be clear on what that change is, right? So that's where goal setting comes in. Like, what does success look like for working with a psychologist?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find that it's a lot of it can be, making sure that they have the awareness to see it themselves?
Awareness is great, but it's not sufficient. You can't just have awareness. You can be a self-aware serial killer. You're still going to go serial kill, right? Okay, right? Right. So self-awareness isn't enough. It's very useful, right? But it's not enough in itself. The thing I was going to say before, which I've forgotten, has come back to me around my like, do I self-analyze? I haven't gone in a while, but I used to see psychologists myself. I think it's like an hour of me time, or instead of dental hygiene, it's mental hygiene.
Yep.
And it's great.
Yeah.
When you're, I don't want to say, what would you say? Are you interpreting someone? Are you when you're helping someone, I guess, are you looking for facial signals? Are you looking for body language? Is that all that comes with the part of your job?
That is a big part of understanding the client experience. If I ask a tricky question and then someone's moving around in their chair, right, then there's something else going on under the hood.
Yeah.
Right? Now, you don't judge that. You're all human. We all do it. But it's important to take a note of that and then maybe circle back and understand what's going on for that person when I ask that question. So you ask questions like, what showed up for you? I just asked you that question, and then, their mind, you can see their eyes sort of flutter away over here, or you can notice, you can start to see clients start to cry, you do. And you can ask them what's showing up. Yeah, so you do have a sensitivity to non-verbals. Yeah,
Is there a question that you ask and you always find you get a similar response?
Oh, okay. Is there a question that I ask?
Yeah.
That is
like whether that be someone gets a little bit nervous, a little bit anxious, feel like they're opening up.
You struck
anything.
a chord, struck a nerve.
There's definitely a common experience, not through everybody, you can't say everyone, but, and I think this is one of the things that good psychologists will pick up on. I shouldn't say good psychologists. I should say some psychologists pick up on, is that the relationship between the human and the emotion is more important than the emotion itself. And so if we're going to get into a little bit of the weeds, I'll bring this up in a second when we talk more applicably probably to endurance running, right? Endurance sports. It's not the emotion, it's the relationship with the emotion. Most people will go to psychologists because of, say, thinking. It could be mood disorder or anxiety, or if you're with the sports psych or the performance psych, there's some kind of anxiety, nerves, low confidence, stress. But what's more important to get to, I think, is the relationship between the human and the emotion rather than the emotion itself.
Yeah.
I never thought about that before. Because you always think about how bad the emotion is, or this and I guess, is the attachment the relationship? If someone's attached to an emotion, is that classified as a relationship?
Well, yeah, it's interesting what you mean by attached to it, right? What do you mean by that?
Like, you think about it every day. It's
So
whenever a certain event happens, that's all you can think about.
Why do we think about it every day?
It's because you have a relationship with it.
Because you have a relationship, but what sort of relationship?
Not a good one.
No, right. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's probably not a overly healthy relationship. And then wham, bam, we're now thinking about or struggling with this particular thing that we don't want, and we've got it.
Yeah.
So yes, is the answer. Detachment, I don't use that term much, but yeah, you can actually absolutely call it like attached versus detached. I call it fused. Yeah.
So have you ever found yourself in situations where it's quite heightened with emotions and not so much you're putting the pressure on, but do you ever get a sense or what is that signal for you to maybe stop asking questions or to back off the pressure a little bit?
Good question. So you've got to remember that, or I have to remember that the client coming in, the human coming in, the person coming to see you, is inherently vulnerable because they're looking for help. So absolutely, you can push. You've got to be careful not to push too hard, and you've got to build trust and rapport with the person who's looking for help. Sometimes that can be instant. Sometimes that can take a long time, right? Depending on personality, depending on what's happened in their lives, who I am. Sometimes it's not quite a match. I'd like to think most of the time it is, but there is a small percentage of people that just don't click with psychologists. That's okay. So they have to go find another one that's more suited. But you've got to build trust and know when you can dial up, like really doing deeper work, right? And really probing to understand more. But yeah, if I'm working with a client for the first couple of sessions and certainly the first session, and I'm noticing that they're struggling with some of the questions I'm asking, I'm going to rein that back. I probably don't go too hard in the first session because I'm just curious in exploring their experience rather than trying to solve anything for them. Yeah.
How are you able to navigate? Because you mentioned before, people always or often come in for help, and do you ever get people acting a certain way where they feel like they don't need help, or their actions and the way they're talking? How are you able to navigate them into realizing that maybe they're actually here for help?
So let's take a look at what you can do, or what the sort of areas in psychology and performance psychology in particular. You can work in mental health. You can work with athletes and performance professionals who are struggling with mental health, right? And that can be a range of things, your typical depressive disorders, your anxiety disorders, could be trauma, could be interpersonal relationships, could be a lot of other factors we won't get into. You could name the whole DSM. It's a big, thick book. And then you've got sort of the worried well, kind of struggling a bit with confidence, or maybe coming back from injury and a bit stress, or having factors like interpersonal relationships with their coaches that they're struggling with, and that's kind of making them lose focus. Then you've got athletes who do come who are just looking for a performance edge. Like, how can I explore to be better? And so that one, with athletes and performance professionals who are doing that, you're not looking for a problem. What you're doing is you're looking to create a common goal, and it's usually going to be a stretch goal. And then when you create the aim, when you create the actual thing you're looking to try and achieve, what that does is inherently create tension. So whenever you set a goal, a big, bold goal, lofty goal, whatever it might be, any goal, or a vision for yourself, you create tension. Imagine an elastic band, rubber band, right? So if I put my thumbs here for you guys, maybe the audience can't see it, but there's a rubber band there, and I go, okay, here I am, I want to be over here. And that rubber band gets stretched. That creates tension. And then you want to move towards that goal. So when you create the right goal with the right energy behind it, the right stretch, then you're creating tension, but in a positive way. And that's where you might work with athletes who are looking just to get better and find an edge. That for the athletes that you're talking about or clients in general, who are coming to you, who are sitting in the room with you, and they're here maybe because they've been told to go here by the coach or their loved one, then it's just about really building trust and working together to find what the resistance is for change. And there's some techniques to that. Motivational interviewing is one of them.
I'm interested to, I love the analogy with the rubber band, and I want to know, what is it that you're talking about with these athletes about the minor stuff? Like what what are you doing to
Release the tension in the rubber band.
Yeah.
Because obviously, if it's here, you've to get from here to here, is the tension, some psychological stuff that they've got to get through.
Whenever you set a goal, you're kind of in a failure state, right? Because you haven't achieved it. So the tension is something that you willingly create. You're not really looking at relieving the tension. It's just a byproduct of what you're doing. In fact, it might not be relieving the tension. It might be actually getting more of it, getting more uncomfortable in a short term anyway.
In terms of like sports, which sport do you find the most interesting to work with in terms of what challenges you the most? What athletes from what sport challenge you the most?
So every sport has unique traits and unique demands. And it's always fun finding those demands. What are the mental demands of your sport? And exploring that with your clients and with athletes or with the teams. And then sort of creating a recipe, if you like, to sort of to meet those demands. I love working in a variety of different sports, to be honest. And one of the great things about working in the VIS with athletes and para-athletes, and then also private practice and golf, is you do get such an amazing array of clients, right? I've loved working with doctors as well who are trying to pass their exams. It seems to be a big thing at the moment, pass their sort of fellowship exams. Okay, right. Sports that require any, and this is most sports to be fair, kind of extreme edge are really cool. And what I mean by that is if you've got fine motor control sports, golf, shotgun, which is where I work a lot in shooting, in clay target shooting, those kinds of sports are very highly skillful sports, really fine motor control. That's quite extreme. Like there's not too many surgeons, I guess, but there's not too many highly pressurized environments where you need to have that fine motor control. That's great. But even I would say in ultra running, there's an extreme edge to that as well. And so anything that requires something extreme is really cool. And most sports do. Gymnastics, you have to be extremely athletic in a variety of different ways and have fine motor control as well in certain sports. You have to have great visuospatial awareness and perception skills. So I'm going to answer the question, tennis as well. Like you have to be able to move and have great hand-eye coordination. And it's one-on-one. There's like a combative, it's not really combative, it's competitive and interactive, but there's a real one-on-one boxing element to that. Boxing, combat sports, amazing as well because it induces fear, right? So there's so many great sports out there and great professions. I don't like to pick one. So it's just everyone has its kind of really exciting part.
Yeah. Do you find it hard? Like what is it about those sports that require like that, those fine motor skills and stuff like that mentally? What is it that you're working on? Yeah. What is it that you're working on with those clients to get that edge?
It would be the same principles you'd work on with any other person, right? It's just how you do it. And what's fun about like golf and tennis and shotgun or even gymnastics is that you can maybe spend time in their daily performance environment, the daily training environment, to actually do that work. So you actually do really practical pieces as well.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Is there a lot
of
of
track on a velodrome as well? Yeah.
Is there a lot of like self-doubt in performance sports? Do you find that's the kind of stumbling block for a lot of athletes?
One of the great myths around athletes and high performance professionals is that there's this amazing confidence in them, right? Which is BS. It's just not true. Like some might have it sometimes, but it's not a stable trait in a lot of athletes and a lot of high performance professionals. But let's consider why. It's not even them as a human. It's the environment. We're talking about zero-sum games. And if you're going to create zero-sum games with scarcity, like only one person can win a medal or only a couple of people can make it to these benchmark events or to qualify for, every 4 years for LA, and there's finite spots, of course it's going to induce a normal human response of self-doubt. That can be really healthy. I doubt myself all the time in terms of what I do and is my framework, right? And I end up always coming back to it, and it makes it more robust. So self-doubt can be really helpful, really healthy if you use it to self-reflect and see if there's any other options or any other avenues, and then ultimately don't get too lost down that path, but then come back to sort of knowing what you're doing is the right path and trusting people. So it's a very healthy element.
Yeah.
I'm quite interested in these concepts and these theories that you might have developed throughout your career. Do you mind sharing some? Because I'm interested around the mind and everything like that, and psychology.
Yeah. So if we take it one, it's not about the thought or the internal world experience, the thought or the emotion. It's the relationship with it. That's one. And then if we look at that, it's like, well, what do we need to do with that feeling? The feeling and thoughts, the ones you want to have happen the least, are going to come up in the moments that matter the most. And so we've got to, rather than trying to stop, suppress, avoid, shut down, win the battle of the mind, we've actually got to change our relationship there and expand our capacity to be able to handle these thoughts and emotions that we know are going to show up. Right? The science of conditioning in terms of classical conditioning, Pavlov's dog. You remember Pavlov's dog? Which you might not know. Basically, it's a study done many, many years ago. And he wasn't actually a psychologist, but basically he wanted to measure, Pavlov wanted to measure the saliva in his dog's mouth. And so he would feed the dog would come over, and he would ring the bell to signify that the dog needs to come over for dinner. The dog would start salivating, and he realised he could just ring the bell and the dog would start salivating without any food, so he didn't need to make his dog so fat. And basically that's a conditioned response. Usually you'd salivate just when food's around, but then you pair it with something, the bell, suddenly you're salivating when there's a bell ringing. Now, we don't know that dogs think, so it's conditioned. And we humans have that as well. We get conditioned, right? So there's a stimulus. It could be the start of a race. It could be the night before a race. It could be an emotion. It could be a thought. And then we then get a response or reaction to that.
Is that why we might do like rituals before something?
So rituals, similar, slightly different. Okay.
Dan's going to get slammed with questions and he's
Right.
like, oh, these are different questions.
So a ritual is a different type of response. So that's correlation. If we're talking like rituals around superstitions.
I'm also talking about, like, say, right before a race or something, something big, and you go back to like routine, you warm up, everything like that. Is that?
So definitely you can do a ritual because historically it like you paired it in your mind with a good performance and remember being calm, and so you might do a ritual that makes you calmer. But I always question how long that's going to last. But yes, so you can pair something together. The interesting part of that is, and this is a really important thing in psychology, is to understand the difference between correlation, when two things are related, versus causation. Something causes something else. So your ritual might have been at the same time as a great performance, but that doesn't mean the ritual caused the good performance. And the danger is when you start to think it does.
Do you get what?
Yeah, because I think about the example of like, are people buying ice cream because it's a hot day, or is it a hot day because people are buying ice cream?
Well, yeah, I think we know the answer to that one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's exactly right.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
the old saying, where there's smoke, there's fire, isn't true. Where there's smoke, not necessarily fire. So you have to understand the difference between the two. And I think that's a big part of psychology, of helping people understand that actually I've been doing all these things, but maybe that's just because of a memory that I paired it with. And I'm doing all these superstitions or rituals that I think is going to help me get a good performance. And what happens usually is The short term is those rituals make people more confident, less stressed, calmer for a short period of time. And then they stop working because it wasn't the rituals or those pre-comp routines that actually caused the good performance. It was their preparation, their hard work, and ultimately where their attention was. That's the important thing. But if we rely on these things, rely on the rituals, we're going to create a false crutch to lean on. And it's not going to be the reason why you end up getting good performance. And that typically happens a lot with adolescents.
Do you find people, like a lot of people, I know you mentioned adolescents, but like even adults,
Yes.
how they find the struggle to separate the two?
Is it almost like a placebo effect? Like, is that what you're creating on yourself? I know
Whoa,
the placebo.
everything this up to another.
So is it a placebo effect? It's okay. I don't know if it would actually be classed as a placebo effect. What it is it's kind of like a superstition. And we'll get into it. All right. One of the big things that I spend a lot of time working on, and a lot of sports psychs, particularly in Australia, spend a lot of time working on, is being able to really tease out what actually helps athletes and high performers perform. What helps athletes get the behavior they want out. It's not what they're thinking and what they're feeling. A ritual is trying to often get a set of thoughts, or I'll change it slightly, a particular state of mind. What we're looking at doing is getting attention on what's important. So the question is your attention on getting your state of mind spot on, or is it attention on what is actually helpful? They're two very different things. And I'll go into a bit more detail now. So state of mind and mindset are two very, very different things, but they're used together all the time. You've done a bit of coaching.
Yeah.
Maybe a lot. You might have asked someone, what was your mindset going into the race? And what they might say is just state of mind. Oh, I was feeling this and I was thinking that and I felt confident, or I wasn't confident and I had some doubt, or I was experiencing a bit of pain. That's state of mind. State of mind fluctuates umpteen times a day. When you woke up this morning, you might have struggled to get out of bed because it was a bit cold, or you didn't sleep so well, or maybe you did. And it takes you a while to get up, and then you have your coffee or caffeine, and suddenly you perk up, your state of mind changes, and then you have an argument over TV or who had the last bit of milk for the breakfast, and then you get frustrated. And then you get in the car and you listen to some music and you chill out, but then you get into traffic and you get annoyed again, and then you have a funny conversation with a mate, and your state of mind is fluctuating all the time. That is very different from a mindset. So mindset is literally what you set your mind to. That can be very stable. That can take some time to work on it. You've got to cultivate it, like this beautiful greenhouse. You've actually got to attend to it, right? But you actually can prioritize what's important to you. You can set out clear intentions, your values, your purpose, your goals, clear behavioral actions you want to show throughout the day. That's starting to get a mindset. Now, you get that right, your state of mind changes, so be it.
It's almost like the belief system behind everything, like your mindset.
It's a part of it can be belief systems. A big part is more understanding your value set. Right. Yeah.
Is there does discipline and things like that play a lot into that mindset?
They can be things you want to cultivate and grow. Discipline, is it a value? Maybe some people will think it is, some people won't. But it can definitely be something you want to move towards. Yeah.
Because I see that in myself all the time. Like my emotions and everything, things fluctuate, and but my mindset when it comes to a goal or anything like that, it's steadfast. It doesn't waver. I'm not erratic in my approach to things.
Yeah. And then that's the beautiful part of the brain. So we're talking about the brain. We know that when that's happening, we've got prefrontal cortex, the front part of our brain, the youngest part of our brain is nicely activated. The prefrontal regions are firing. We're goal orientated and goal connected. That's not just a goal as I want to win a medal or win finish first. It can just be things you're looking to achieve and the way you want to act. We set these sort of intentions and goals, and we know that's far enough, right? And it kind of quietens down the default mode regions of our brain, the limbic areas, and sort of deeper, more comfort-seeking, distress-avoiding parts of our brain. We know it can do that. That's the sort of part as well that sort of produces emotion. But you can still have those show up when your mindset is connected to what's important.
Can you give us the 3 biggest hitters to help you improve your mindset?
Improve your mindset. Okay. So first is clarity of what your mindset actually is, then what you're doing to connect with it, to actual behavioral pieces that you're going to do to bring your mindset to life. Otherwise, they're still just thoughts. Those 2. And the third one is there's a distinction between your mindset and your state of mind and your emotions. And I think for me, it doesn't matter when you've got your mindset right, which includes your goals, values. It actually doesn't matter as much how you feel. It's not important.
Can you elaborate on that a little?
Yeah. So when you have clarity over the way you want to live your life or perform in a particular event, train, and you are super connected to that, it doesn't matter what you feel.
Can I give you a quick example? And I want just
You can
get your thoughts on it. So last week I had an event on, and the 2 or 3 weeks before that event, I'll go back a little bit further. So I came off the back of an event. I did quite well. I kind of felt flat afterwards because, obviously you come off the back of the event, all this hype, all the training and all that kind of stuff. Then I had a really flat 2 or 3 weeks before this event that I had last week. And going into it, I was like, oh man, I don't actually know how I'm going to go. I feel real vulnerable because I know that there's expectations of me to do well. And I just, from day to day, I just felt lazy. And then I hit the event and I actually still did well. Mm-hmm. Is that similar to what you're saying in terms of maybe my state of mind wasn't great, but my mindset is still dialed in on the thing? Because even just before the race started, I'm like, I actually don't know how I'm going to go here. I've had a really crappy 3 weeks, but then it's like the gun went off and everything just like straightened up and that clarity came back through.
So there might be a few things going on there, but similar. Yeah, I'd say what's great about that is your emotions don't have to define who you are and how you perform. So when I say it doesn't matter, I can be quite playful in session with athletes I've worked for a long time, and I might call them up or text them before a major event and I'll be like, how are you feeling? And if we've done the work really well, they'll reply, it doesn't matter. And I actually remember doing it at the Olympics in Paris with one of the guys I was working with. He was kind of smiling and laughing and joking about it. So yes, the big difference there would be how you then go in those 3 weeks. Are you worrying about how you're feeling, which sounds like you were, which is normal, okay, versus being kind to yourself, understanding that you're feeling that way and it's okay, and that you can still get the job done in 3 weeks' time by connecting to what's important to you, even though that might feel really, really hard. So that would be kind of the model approach would be in those 3 weeks, rather than worrying about how you feel, kind of being like, totally understandable, I'm feeling this way and I'm still going to do what's important. So we're not being robots here, we're being fundamentally human.
Yeah.
So that would be important. What was interesting there for me is the fact that you were still competent. You still displayed, by the sounds of it, competence, even if you weren't feeling confident.
Yeah.
And that's probably number 2 for me. It's like state of mind versus mindset. I say number 2, not in any order, just one of the key principles and pillars. right? So mindset over state of mind, and competence is more important than the feelings of confidence.
Yeah.
And you try and display that.
Yeah. Yeah, because it was weird. And yeah, finishing it. And now off the back of it, I'm like, it's like you almost reflect and say, hey, look, I wasted 3 weeks. Next time, don't do that. Like it's almost as if, well, in the ultra running space, it's a real prevalent thing where, for me personally, I look at things that actually don't contribute to the goal. It's like, and I think you mentioned it a little bit earlier, where it's like worrying about this. Is that going to help me achieve my goal? No. So then don't worry about it. Is that something that you work on with athletes, making sure that they're not allowing emotions, just general life stuff and everything to come in, and it's like almost like a bouncer at the door saying, no, you're not coming in because you actually do not contribute to the outcome that we want?
It's a great question. I see where you're going with it. Yes and no. So actually we don't talk about not letting things in. That suppression is what does that do for, like, from a relationship perspective?
Yeah, not great.
Right, okay. So are we suppressing emotion, or are we actually expanding our capacity, learning to sit with tough stuff, being okay with it, kind yourself in that moment, and refocusing on what's important, and kind of understanding that the worries are going to show up? Right. So the key difference is not the fact that we don't want or we're pushing the worries away. We're not doing that. We don't really teach suppression. What we do is we teach acceptance of the fact that you're going to have these nursery rhymes show up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then just having the tools to overcome them.
You can correct, right? The piece here is, if you look back at that first event, what was the event?
It was like a backyard ultra, which is
A backyard ultra.
Yeah.
And we knew everything about you, from your genetics to your life experiences to everything about the lead up to the event, all the hormonal changes in your body, the nutrition you had, the structure and function of your brain. Would you say, if we knew everything, would you say, oh, it's totally understandable that I had those worries?
Yeah.
Right. So if that's totally understandable, then we can treat them as just thoughts, right? Just worries. We can label them and we can ultimately let them be, and we can give them a name. I like to use the nursery rhyme idea with my clients and talk about, okay, what nursery rhymes are going to show up in that 3 weeks?
Yeah.
What stories do we know are going to show up? And so it's, rather than trying to stop them, we're actually being prepared for them. And what happens is a really interesting thing, right? Because when we look at the science of attention, there's something called a saliency network. A saliency network is what we deem important. And if we start to go, well, we know, right, we know, Tim, with some certainty, you're going to have a fair bit of worries and these particular stories that show up for you, we can start to treat them as not important. And in fact, it looked like they weren't really important, right?
Yeah.
So, but what we do is we get a much healthier response rather than a stress about the worries, or what we call in psychology meta-anxiety or meta-stress, anxiety about anxiety or stress about stress. We're more accepting.
Yeah.
And so we get a benefit for that as well.
Yeah.
So we're spending less energy on fighting and
Yeah.
more time being able to connect with what's important.
Are you familiar with like the concept and the idea of choking?
Yes? Under pressure?
No, no way.
Well, yeah. Yep.
I want to know your thoughts around this, because I think me personally and a lot of people out there and many people that listen to this podcast may very well experience choking under pressure and how it has physiological effects on top of all this mental stress. Could you explain how the whole idea of choking works and how we can maybe prevent it from happening?
Can I give a little bit of context before we go on? So Ollie, at his cross country against his peers, has in the past he's found it harder to compete against them. But then he turns up at a 50-kilometer race against adults and whomps them. And it's like, and he has, and like, I mean, in your own words, you don't fear that start line as much as the local, school cross country, but against men who are like on Australian teams and things like that.
It's weird because I would look at myself right now and I could go and perform on the world stage or really big races in the ultra running community against the best athletes, and I wouldn't have a worry about it. But as soon as I transition over to cross country at school, where kids my age are racing, it's like I drop the ball halfway through the race. When it gets hard, I feel like I choke.
Yeah, right. You're not alone. Okay, with lots and lots of athletes can feel different types of psychological private experiences depending on the context. I can't remember what term I gave this the other day, but it was this idea of athletes that want to become best in the world, but are more comfortable being underdogs.
Yeah.
It's not going to work, right? So it's an unworkable scenario. But let's go back into choking. So there's a couple of things that, but it sounds like they're happening for you, but rather than diagnosing, I'll talk about two things. Number one, with choking under pressure, it's typically, it can either be a very slow and then sudden rise of stress or anxiety. And then there's an important key part to that, because it's not the emotion, it's the relationship with the emotion, right? And then the second part to what you described is the pressure of expectations. If you're talking about with your peers versus with the top 50 in the world, all I'm hearing is expectations.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so we'll talk about that in a second. Let's talk about something that is fundamental to performance psychology, and that's called experiential avoidance. Okay, so that's a technical term, very fancy. All it means is an unwillingness to remain in contact with a really difficult internal experience. Okay, so it can be it's called a private experience, but let's just call it anxiety, stress. So experiential avoidance is an unwillingness to remain in contact with a tough psychological experience. Again, who would want to remain in contact with a tough psychological experience? No one. We're all human, and yet we have to do hard things all the time. It can be hard if you're top 10 athlete in the world. It can be hard if you're working 9 to 5. Doesn't matter. We all have hard stuff. But so what happens in choking is historically there's been a blame on anxiety. It's like, we need to therefore get you out of this hyper arousal state. We need to make you less anxious. Fine. Okay, there's problems with that, because if we're trying to get people less anxious, we are worsening people's relationship with tough emotions, because we're now saying it's the emotion's fault, not yours, right? We need to now blame the emotion, and now that we risk creating something called metacognitive anxiety, so anxious about anxiety. What's more accurate, I think, is actually that it's a rise in the anxiety, and then we want to get rid of it. So what is choking under pressure? Is it the emotion, or is it a behavior that happens?
Behavior.
It's a behavior, right? We only know someone chokes under pressure because suddenly they underperform.
The way they behave.
The way they behave.
Yeah.
Correct. Right. So it's not actually, choking under pressure isn't the internal experience, it's the behavior. We then, as humans or as commentators, go, oh, they were nervous or anxious, they couldn't handle the pressure. But we don't actually know what actually is going on. If someone's really super anxious and being able to perform, we don't think they're choking under pressure, but they still might have exactly the same level of anxiety as someone who suddenly can't perform. So when we're talking about choking under pressure, we have to look at the behavior that occurs that actually removes the anxiety. So if we think about this, choking under pressure is a rise of anxiety, and then the choke is the behavior that actually removes the anxiety, but it costs performance.
So like stopping and
Oh, I like that.
Stopping, right? If you don't correct, stopping will stop you feeling that discomfort. You'll feel other stuff afterwards. So the other cost is secondary as well. But your brain is like, I don't want to feel this anymore. So I'll do it. Tennis player, slow down their second serve in break point. Okay, because it feels safer. But their opponent will smash it back. It's the behavior. It's not the emotion. The behavior reduces the emotion in the short term, but the cost is performance, and that is choking under pressure.
So how do we stop that from happening?
Okay, right. Okay, before we get into a session, right, what did I say before? We've got to get a better relationship with that emotion. And reason why we do this is not some hippy-dippy, like, oh, we've got to let go of emotion, because it's not quite that. It's actually letting go of control strategies, but I can get into that later. What we've got to do, just lost my train of thought. I'll just bear with me 1 second. You asked me how I stopped that. Oh, we've got to actually expose to the emotion. You've actually got to feel the tough stuff and then change your patterns of responses. So if you really, because exposure therapy in psychology is the most effective form of behavior change and therapy. Whether you have phobias to spiders, we've actually got to then get a level of exposure to spiders, right? And if it's anxiety, we've got to get a level of exposure to anxiety.
So is it almost like laying out the cards on the table and then showing the person, hey, look, there's actually, you can touch that. There's nothing.
Yeah.
Well, I have an even better example. I used to be really scared of running in the dark because I thought that there was someone behind me chasing me all the time. When I first started out running, and I kind of had to suck it up for a very long time and keep exposing myself to running out in the dark. And now I don't look behind me to see if someone's chasing me. I just run it at night.
Yeah. So you repeatedly did it. Now, there's a really important piece here, because sometimes you can keep doing it and get the same result. So the actual method of exposure to the tough stuff is really important. If I'll use the example, you kept running at night, but what you did was you put a giant torch on all the time, right? And you had 6 other people running with you, and you put on some scary music in the background or scary noises to ward other people. You wouldn't expose yourself to the ability for your brain to reprocess the fact that it's safe. So what you have to do is kind of be mindful, and this is where some old school psychology called behavioral experiments comes in, where actually when you're exposing yourself to tough stuff, you're actually creating a behavioral experiment. You're like, okay, I'm feeling this emotion. Historically, I interpret this emotion as information to tell me something bad's going to happen, or that I'm about to lose, or something like that. And now I've got to reprocess that information. But what we do is we just go, I'm going to behave this way. I'm going to connect with my mindset. I'm going to do it this way. And if I lose, I'll lose. If I win, I win. But most importantly, I'm going to do it this way. And we do it really mindfully. And then our brain eventually adapts and learns that it's safe. Not that you're going to have less emotion, but it's safe to feel the emotion. And then we start to get into I've got a more positive relationship with this tough experience. Now, second part, pressure of expectations. Because we're choking under pressure, it's a very personal experience. Some people would choke when they're running with top 50 in the world. Some people will be absolutely fine running with their peers, and then vice versa. This is the thing about the individual, right? It's just very, very different. But let's look at this in one of my favorite analogies, because let's understand what pressure is. In fact, what is pressure?
I would define pressure, for me, would be putting a certain amount of expectations on my back and then having to perform, thinking that if I don't get that outcome, that it's not good enough.
Okay.
That's how I would describe it.
Is pressure an emotion?
I would say it's a psychological experience. I don't think it would be on the mood meter emotion scale. I think it's a combination of different things, including emotion. So we can call it you feel pressure, but I don't think it's a psychological experience more than it is just a feeling. Yeah. So let's go. I think you like this one. Okay, so can you both ride a bike?
Yep.
Great. So let's say you go to Geelong, a local park, and you're riding your bike along there. And let's just say it's 2 meters wide, this bike path. What's your ability to ride on this bike path low, medium, or high without veering off the edges?
Oh,
High.
easy.
High. Okay. So then we take a trip. We'll go overseas somewhere and we climb the mountains. We've got our bikes with us. And we come across this beautiful flat ridge, same width as the bike path. But we look over on the left edge. It's a 200-meter vertical drop. Jagged rocks at the bottom. On the other side, same thing, but white water, gushing torrent, snapping alligators or crocodiles. Who knows where we are? Don't ask me why, but we have to cycle across this ridge. What's our ability? Low, medium, high.
Yeah,
It's lower.
It's a hell of a lot lower.
But listen to what I just asked.
What's our ability?
What's your ability
Oh.
to cycle across?
It's
So
the same.
It's the same, but suddenly the task demand seems higher, but it's the same task.
Wow.
Okay? Now, what's happened? Why are we suddenly saying it's lower?
The added pressure.
The pressure of death.
Consequences of failure. When you raise expectations, you raise consequences of failure. Okay? And it creates something called the ability of a violation of expectation. But park that for a second. But expectations are shackles to being psychologically flexible. They're like handcuffs. Anyway, so we're on this mountain. We think our ability is lower. We see the edges. How are we going to cycle across this? We're going to cycle the same way as we do in the local park?
Well, we're going to have to, yeah.
But would we?
No, we would overthink it. I would overthink it.
Overthink it. But what does that look like?
Nerves.
Yeah, no, it's a feeling.
Shakiness?
Again, that's a bit more behavioural, but more physiological. What would we cycle the same way?
Oh, it's slower. You go
You'd
slower.
cycle slower.
Yeah.
Okay, you typically cycle slower. But what happens if we cycle slower? What happens to our balance?
Yeah.
It's unsteady.
Yeah, if it's unsteady, we're more likely to fall or less likely to fall?
More likely.
We're more likely to fall. So we do something called regress to safety. It makes us feel safer, but the cost is
More unsafety. Oh, I don't even know the word.
cost is
More
the
unsafety.
cost is
Yeah.
we're less likely to succeed.
Yeah.
Right? We're more likely to fall off this edge.
Yep.
And so our attention gets hooked by danger or the consequences of failure. We're feeling pressure. And again, just like we're stopping under pressure with the choking experience, we regress to safety. We do something that makes us feel safer, takes away some of the emotion, but the cost is performance, or the cost is your ability to perform. And if I'm looking at two silhouettes, right, of you cycling across the bike path at home versus up on the mountain, you look like two different cyclists, one high competence and one low competence. But your ability is the same, but you're changing it to regress to safety, to feel more safe. And that's the other example of choking under pressure.
Can choking work? Obviously, choking in one direction, that's what it looks like. You obviously, your nerves are all that kind of there. But on the other end of the spectrum, when you've got athletes who are high performers and are constantly winning, are they just training themselves to turn up and go, I'm a winner, I'm going to win? So they're not nervous, they're not anxious because you're constantly winning.
There's definitely a first time hardness to something. Yeah, the first time is always the hardest time.
Yeah.
That there's definitely something in that. I've got golfers who win their first tournaments and then they go win the next week. And it was a totally different experience. And it's so how come it was so hard the first time versus the second time? It's almost like a perception shift. So absolutely, there's a belief factor that can change. How long that lasts is kind of contingent on maintaining standards, right? And personality. So definitely begats winning, or makes it easier for sure. But why? Again, it's not the fact that you have a medal around your neck or a trophy on your mantelpiece at home doesn't mean you suddenly have a greater VO2 max or your mitochondria in your legs have changed, does it? It means your attention is freed up. So that's the key here. I think psychology fundamentally is based on where you're placing attention. And if you're freed up, your attention's placed on what's important and what's helpful, then you're going to give yourself the best chance of success.
And is that sorry, I know you were going to ask something, but is that in regards to, obviously putting your attention on the things that matter, as opposed to, obviously, don't worry about the alligators and stuff over there. They're going to be fine. Don't put your attention on that. Put your attention on what you can control.
Well, absolutely. You can only, like, that's true, putting your attention on what you can control. Sometimes it takes time to understand what matters. So, remembering that best performance usually comes with some sort of automaticity to it in terms of where your attention is. It's not like you've got to hyper focus on one thing. Attention is always somewhere. It's never gone. It's just making sure it's on what's really, really helpful and what's important in that moment. Yeah. And that's different for different people and different sports as well. But yeah, when you're talking about the alligator, absolutely need to understand what those alligators are, because again, coming back to that saliency network thing I talked about what's important, talking about these things are ultimately helpful because you can actually then reduce the threat of them just by talking through and processing them, rather than shutting off and hoping that things are going to be okay.
I feel like a lot of people say when it comes to mental issues is all you got to do is just let go. Is that a term that you use a lot?
So I do an exercise in session with my clients around that's similar, but it's what are you letting go of? And this is the really important piece. To understand this is fundamental, because you're not letting go of the emotion. I don't know what letting go of anxiety means. Maybe someone does. I don't. I don't know what letting go of an emotion means. I know what letting go of control means. So think about it this way, Ollie, when we talked about those examples of we regress to safety, so we go slow on the bike, or we serve the second slower, or we stop. All of those things are us trying to control how we feel. And in sport, and this is the big thing around performance, is when we learn, and this is what I really want to get across, is that in trying to control emotions, definitely too much, but in trying to sort of suppress them, the last port of call, the easiest port of call in performance is to change your behavior, which costs performance. Right? So what we have, you have to remind me of the question again. Letting go. So when we talk about letting go, we're talking about letting go of the need to control the feeling. And that's when that's why people talk about getting comfortable with discomfort, because we're not actually trying to control the emotion anymore. We're now trying to lean in, expand our capacity to feel it, reinterpret it, not something that's threatening, but just as something that's happening.
I often talk to people about, in these multi-day events that I do, obviously pain's it's going to be there. You've got to feel it. But people, and I've done it before as well, you kind of try and control the pain with the way you react to it. So you're in pain, you'll change your shoes. You're in pain, you'll change your stride pattern. You're in pain. So you're spending all this energy and all this time. And the beauty of ultra sports is that you've got plenty of time to try all these things. And the thing that I find personally that works is that once I've tried everything, there's actually nothing else left to try. Mm-hmm. And then I let go. Yeah. But
what are you letting go of?
Trying to control. Yeah.
Right.
So that's it.
That's it. Right. And maybe it's just words, but for me, it's really important because you're not letting go of pain because it feels like pain's then disappearing. And sometimes pain does disappear when you let go of control. Yeah. Right. And that can be emotional pain or physical pain. Sometimes it gets bigger, but it doesn't matter because it is what it is. And that's when we start to bring in the skills of acceptance and learning to sit with discomfort and changing our understanding of what emotions are or feelings are or pain. I always find it really interesting talking to athletes who struggle with anxiety, which a lot do, and talking about what's worse, the feeling of anxiety or the feeling of lactic acid building in the body in pre-season or their lungs burning. And most of them say the second bit, right? the pre-season training. I'm like, why are you okay with sitting with that? And because it's more uncomfortable than the feeling of anxiety. But they're saying, well, I know it's going to help me. I know there's a purpose to it. And maybe, just maybe, there's also a purpose, or there's a reason why we've got the anxiety. Maybe it's not a bad thing. Maybe it's fact it's saying that you're in contention. Maybe it's a sign that you're actually really close to success. Maybe it's a sign that, when you're feeling pain, you're improving physically. Maybe when you're sitting with anxiety, you probably got a chance to do something really special.
Do you think it can also shine a spotlight, or it would just be like a signpost to be looking at something else that's going on?
Can you just explain that?
In terms of so anxiety is building, and you're feeling like I'm anxious about this. I feel I'm going to quit. Is that anxiety a signpost to start looking and problem solving?
Oh yeah. So it depends how we interpret that. Okay, not in the race, but more generally.
Yeah, it can be generally, but also obviously,
yes. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not saying we should be robots and ignore. When I say emotions aren't important, I mean in those moments it's not as important as the way you want to act. But sometimes you've got to listen to what you feel. You've got to use your gut, and you're feeling sad. I had a situation at work the other day where I felt really crap about something, and I realised, you know what, I did not act to all my values. And I reflected on it, but I'm not going to be like, oh, that's just an emotion. I'm going to move it away.
Yeah.
So yeah, sometimes you do have to understand those emotions, but it's important to know how to act and when.
Yeah.
Reflection pieces and listening to your emotions and on how you've acted is absolutely important.
Yeah, because it's not so much that the anxiety, I'm just going to ignore the anxiety. It's just oh, hang on, I'm feeling a certain way. Is this shining a spotlight on something else somewhere else? And that anxiety is the byproduct of something else going wrong.
Yes, it could well be.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to
sure.
ask. Yeah,
for sure. Most of the time, it's just because you care, though.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Well, you're caring about something.
Yeah. This is going back to obviously letting go of that pain, and then when you finally let go of the control, what tool can someone use to speed up that process?
I was going to ask a similar thing. Is it more so an instant tool that is there an instant tool like that where you can just flick a switch and you're fine, or is it more so something that you have to work on over time? Is it really something you got to build a relationship?
It's a really interesting question. So it's different to everybody, for everybody. Broadly speaking, it's something you work on over time, because if you've got neural architecture in your brain and complex neural networks that have created a relationship with something, you've got to work to change that. And unfortunately, as much as I joke around being a non-invasive neurosurgeon and going in and try, right, it takes time to quieten down certain networks and takes time to build up others. But you do it. Mindfulness, exposure, acceptance, goal set, mindset, all of these kinds of things you do repeatedly. You fall off the wagon and you come back onto it, and you keep working on it, and you learn and you reflect and you make mistakes.
Do you think that's where experience comes in sometimes? Obviously experiencing those things, and then being you look at an athlete that's got experience and they're unfazed and they just turn up and just perform.
So again, yes, yeah. So experience plays a big role, but what I also would like people to understand is that you can also connect with these things without the experience. It just might feel a bit harder the first time.
Yeah.
Experience makes things easier. And reflection makes experience easier, because if you reflect on the right way, you get the right learnings out of things, which makes you more competent. Right? Even if you lose or fail at what you're looking at doing, if you reflect and you learn, you will become more competent from those failures, even though they suck and they hurt, they're painful. But yeah, I don't want people to think I have to fail first time before I can get the experience. Some people can do it. Some people win Olympics and Paralympics the first time they ever go.
Yeah, we've recently seen marathon runners turn up at a marathon, first marathon ever, and run sub 2 hours. And it's like, well, he didn't need to fail at 10 marathons beforehand to learn the lesson.
Yeah.
I want to give you an interesting situation. So we're talking, and it's sort of about experience and maybe someone who trains. So I train a lot, or I have trained a lot for getting faster. And I race at Parkrun, local 5K, against Dad. And Dad, who has so much experience across his running career, is able to turn up and only runs 15 to 20 seconds slower than me, regardless of how much I've specifically trained for this event. What is it about the experience versus the training?
Well, that's an interesting question.
Why? In other words, why is Dad not so bad?
I mean, your dad's got, how old are you?
I am 17.
Yeah, so he's got not quite. He's got 26 years of physical work under his belt. So there's a few things happening there.
Yeah.
Not just psychologically.
Yeah.
But I mean, next week it could be 22 seconds. Right?
Yeah.
I don't know if I've got. I'm not sure if I have a psychological answer for that one.
That's right.
There's probably a few things happening.
So you've never worked in ultra running, essentially?
No, look, I would have seen, haven't seen, so not in ultra running. I think I've probably seen 1 or 2 ultra runners in my time, again, early on. Did a lot of work in Ironman for a long period, but don't see too many at the moment. Yeah.
The game of ultra running, essentially, especially the multi-day stuff, I'm not sure if you're aware of what a backyard ultra is.
No, I haven't heard of backyard.
So it's 6.7 kilometers every hour on the hour.
I have heard of this.
Until there's no one left. That game is essentially a mental game towards the end. It's like, how long can you last before you stop? How long can you outlast the guy next to you? And sometimes there's some mental tricks played out and things like that. But this is going to sound stupid, this question, but what is it, do you think, that motivates people to push so far mentally into that space, as opposed to athletes who, and don't get me wrong, I know most athletes will, physically they're obviously pushing and working hard and things like that. But when all the physical stuff is taken care of and the only thing left is mental, what do you think it is about that mental game that drives people?
I don't think it's that different from what I've discussed already with you. I think the person who's more willing to sit with discomfort in service of something is the one who's going to get the chocolates, I think, or is more likely to. Or even better way of saying it, is going to give themselves the best chance of success for themselves. So I think if it's not winning, a lot of times I ask people what's important to them and they say winning. And then I just ask, well, why don't you just go down a level? Why don't you just compete at a lower level, because you win every time? And it sort of induces, it's not winning. It's like, it's the competition, the challenge, these kinds of things, right? When you start to get some values and some really interesting, cool stuff. But it's that curiosity, that interest, and that willingness to sit in something tough for longer than something else. That's what I think it is. The ability to really sit with discomfort.
Yeah.
I went, and I don't think it's different in any sport. I think because when you do the meaningful thing, it's going to be the hardest thing. It's going to be the time you're going to feel more vulnerable. And I knew this. I've like I said, I've been a psych for 16 years. But when I went to Paris, I chatted with one of the guys that I was working with really closely, and he did really, really, really well. And I realized that it was the person who was able to go deeper, not deeper in the competition, but deeper within themselves, to sit with discomfort and still perform within automaticity, not go safe, not remove pain. That one, the person who's more willing to experience, is the one who's going to give themselves the best chance.
Well, and can you tell the difference between those two athletes? I often look at a start line of an ultra race, especially these long ones, backyard ultras, and people always, like even my clients will say, what's the difference? Why? Because it's not a physical one. At the World Champs, you had a an English female who was like 5 foot tall that ran for 95 hours. You had a 50-year-old American. You had a 55-year-old Belgian, a 40-year-old Australian guy. They're all different. So the only difference is the one that you actually can't see.
And this is where I think I'm going to say something a bit weird, but we'll get into it. Content versus contact. So I don't know, but I can hazard an idea that you're going pretty deep. Let's say you're the fifth person. You're fifth last person. What could show up for you in terms of the content of your mind? What sort of thoughts could your mind generate in terms of content?
Do you want to know what has been generated?
Yeah.
I can tell you. Self-doubt. I think
This athlete's better than me.
This athlete's better than me. If I win this thing, this could change my life. All those kinds of things. Oh, I'm in pain. I've had enough. I'm tired.
I've got an injury. Do I have an injury?
I've done really well. You can stop here.
Oh yeah, that one definitely comes.
Right. Okay. So we can probably get an understanding of, and again, a bit like I asked you before, if we knew everything about you, would it make sense you're going to have these thoughts?
Yeah.
We can predict, I think, with a fair degree of, I'm not saying we know everything about the brain, but I think we can have a good guess of when you're fatigued, your blood sugar levels are lower, you've been running, on you're sleep deprived. We know your brain is going to produce these nursery rhymes. As sure as I say to you both now, Humpty Dumpty sat on her, you can't not think wool.
Yeah. So
So we know that X number of hours into this race, your brain is going to produce these things. Are we ready for them to show up? No, stop them, because as soon as they come, you failed. Right? Are you ready? Are you fully prepared for these uncomfortable private internal experiences to show up and treat them just like a nursery rhyme? That, I think, is fundamentally important to going that extra yard, right? That extra kilometre, that extra hour, that extra 2 minutes.
So yeah, so you think that's the difference between the...
And then can you contact what's important? Your mind is going to generate content. Can you acknowledge that? Let it be, right? And not let it go, let it be. And contact what's important for a time. Get your attention back onto that.
But what are people training themselves to do to become in contact again? Like that what are they doing to be able to do that?
So you've got to do the simulation, like actually talk about these things and understand and maybe prepare for them. That's one. You could actually do some exposure work with them. You can record them, listen to them, run with them till they satiate in terms of they just become sounds. You could expose yourself to them and learn to sit with them through acceptance. Do mindfulness, right? Practice mindfulness with those thoughts. Expose yourself in a really mindful and practical way. That's how I would look to do it, as well as getting in contact with what's important. You've got to do both.
If it's pain and the build up of lactic acid and all that stuff during a run, is it more so you're exposing that through training and doing the hard work?
Well, that exposure also reduces it.
Yeah.
And so it creates more of a buffer. So there's a slight difference between the two. But the deeper you go into a race, the more physical fatigue or lactic you're going to feel.
Yeah.
So, but you're used to feeling it and you're okay with feeling it and you've done the work. So you have to do the same with the mind. And
that's the difference that you're seeing with the best.
Well, I don't know. I haven't worked with that many ultra runners. Haven't worked with top. But my understanding is they're not shirking from discomfort. I doubt that very much. Yeah, that would be similar to other elite athletes. And again, there seems to be in all sports and business professionals and medical professionals, those can sit with discomfort. The best tend to get the best out of themselves. I won't say win, but because everyone's on their own journey, I do believe that. You thinking sideways and looking sideways isn't gonna help you. But they tend to get the best out of themselves. Yeah.
Do you think there's a correlation between like believing like a self-belief of where you think that you belong and performance, and whether your performance can be better. Because obviously no one knows someone could look at you and go, physically he could run for 24 hours or physically he could run for 48 hours. I've got no idea. I've just trained.
Yeah.
So at what point does that actual self-belief tie in? Because if I go to an event, I look at that event and I say to myself, I expect to be at the pointy end. I expect to see myself in the top 5 or 10.
Yeah, sure.
And some of the best backyard ultra races on the planet have had people run into the hundreds because the top 6 or 7 were all people that believed that they were the winner and they'd been winners in the past. So how much does that self-belief play into being able to go further and overwrite the feelings of pain and the physical?
So that state of mind, it can be very powerful, right? I would question whether that self-belief is no, I'll take a step back. Where were they generating that self-belief from?
From previous results, from
Right,
having that confidence.
Competence, connection to competence, not the feelings of confidence. So the feelings of confidence will come last. Connection to competence will drive. So competence, blood, sweat, tears, lactic acid, pain, failures, all the non-sexy things around performance and sport, right? Those things generate competence. They're hard blocks to build. But you do it enough, you eventually build those blocks. And you do it enough, they become automatic and they become very stable. From there, you start to get actions of competence. Those actions might be PBs, they might be finishing races really strong. And then from there, the feelings and thoughts of confidence come. But those are always the last things to come and the first things to disappear. If you look at it like a pyramid, so the blocks of competence get built first, then the actions in the middle, and then the thoughts and feelings at the top. Okay? And so it's the competence that drives actions, that drives the thoughts and feelings. The last things to come are the thoughts and feelings. What we do as humans, this is where you've got to be very careful. A bit of, like I said, correlation and causation before, Ollie. When what humans do is they go, yes, I remember feeling really good. So when I'm feeling good, that means I can perform well, which makes me competent. We use how we feel as a guide to whether we're competent or not. Those people aren't doing that. They're not using their feelings as guides to whether or not they're competent. They're connected fully with their competence. Okay, not the feelings of confidence. That comes last. They're not relying on that feeling. They trust the work that they've done. Remember, confidence, it's a Latin word, con, if you have chili con carne, yeah? Yep. That means the con is with, chili with beef. Fidens, fidelity, right? Trust. So it's not a feeling, confidence, it's with trust. And trust, to trust, it's a verb. In performance, it's much more helpful to think about it as a verb, as a behavior. So we're going to place our trust in our competence, not on the way we're feeling. There's too many factors that are going to alter the way we feel, our states of mind.
Could you
So
say
it's
you
connection
have
to competence that drives ultimately self-belief.
Yeah, would you say you have to have confidence in your competence?
So that, so some people, well, yes, if we're talking about trust, but some people might not feel ready. They might not feel competent. In fact, most people who are AFL players, soccer players, if you're competing every week, you get a sense of feeling ready. You know if you're ready. You've done repetitions and you compete every week, you get regular touch points. But most sports, a lot of sports aren't weekly. They might be monthly, it might be quarterly. So it's very hard to feel ready because you don't get that touch point. That's that confidence in your competence. You might not feel it. You may never feel ready. But I'm not so interested in whether you feel ready rather than whether you are ready. So have you done the work? And that's why you have a team behind you.
What do you have to say about athletes who have their identity too fused with their sport?
Sure.
Because that's something me personally I've had a lot of issues with in the past, is being so attached to this outcome and this sport that I ended up losing myself.
Yeah, I think it's a big thing. But again, firstly, you have to acknowledge that it's really healthy to have healthy identities. It's broadly a good thing to feel connected to a community, a tribe. Identity can be fused with them, but obviously there can be too much of it, for sure. That's something to explore and to understand. And usually that there's a variety of different factors that might cause a too high a fusion with identity. Some can be like what parents are saying to you, particularly in like golf and tennis. You see a lot of parents who overvalue their kids' identity in their tennis or their golf or any sport actually. So that can happen, and then later on in life that becomes issues. It becomes an issue because I'm only worthy if I'm good at the sport. That can be anything though. It doesn't have to be sport. It can be music. It can be academia. That's just part of the parcel. But then there's obviously a passion that can be developed that we humans can then draw on that passion, but then that consume them and they lose connection to other things, other parts of their identity, because we're not just one identity, we're many. So you've got to explore that and then start to create goals, reconnecting with other identities and understanding why there's fusion with that identity.
If someone is finding that they're not getting what they want, is it maybe a case of that they're too attached to it?
I mean, it could be one. Yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah. It can, when you love something too much, you can squeeze it and strangle it for sure.
Dad always says that to me.
Yeah.
Is that yeah?
But that why like that could be end up overtraining. It could be ultimately like a not good enough story, sort of driving, doing too much. Perspective is usually quite a helpful thing. So, yeah, I would say with trying too hard, overdoing it is obviously broadly an unhelpful thing a lot of the time.
Yeah, sometimes it's more about patience and letting things grow.
Because that's something I think I find hard, and many people find hard, is that it's always, if you don't get something, it's like, okay, I got to work harder now. I got to go back to the blocks, and I'm gonna start training harder, do more.
No one's ever going to criticize you for trying hard. It's such a safe space to go to. So many athletes, that overcompensation I was talking about before. It's easy space to go to for many people. It's like it's worked in the past, and so no one's going to criticize you for trying hard. It's the uncomfortable thing to do. This is to maybe take the reins off, even though that might be the helpful thing to do.
That's why it's important to have a good team around you too. So, I've got one more question from us.
Sure.
I'm really super interested in this one.
Okay.
So, have you read the book, The Inner Game of Tennis?
I can't say I have. No.
So it talks about like the self one and the self two, in terms of like the thinking self and the intuitive self.
Sure.
Obviously, it speaks about them almost being two separate things.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to get your perspective on that, and especially when it comes to high performance sport, where obviously in the book it speaks about tennis, and when the athletes were trying to think their way to hitting the ball, it's like almost like your wrist has to be here, all those things. So if you think your way through it, you'll stuff it up.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you just intuitively just do it, it'll happen.
Unless you never played tennis before.
Yeah, that too. But it's sort of always, it talks about how tennis is like a beautiful example where like so many things are happening all at once, and for you to have to think about how fast the person is serving the ball to you, where you have to return the ball, where you have to place the racket, where you have to be positioned, whether or not they're going to hit it back over. Like all of that, if you really had to think about that, you'd fold. Whereas this is where it talks about the self 1, self 2. So that self 1 part of you would think about everything that you have to do. But the self 2 part, I don't want to say let go, but just lets it be. It's a flow.
Yeah, so it's not a flow state, but yes, it's performance with automaticity versus conscious control. That's what those two are. Okay, and when you train yourself well enough, things become automatic. When you drive a car, you drive with automaticity. When you walk with automaticity. When you eat with automaticity. You've done things so much repeatedly, you ultimately do things with automaticity. It's not mindless, but there's a set pattern essentially in your brain. A motor cortex is firing and everything's flowing nicely. And then there's conscious control. Under anxiety, under pressure, we want to go to conscious control because it makes us feel safer. So again, when we talk about mindset, we have to understand what's important, how you want to play the game, all these things that are ultimately connected to helping performance with automaticity. Yeah. So that self 1, self 2 is basically conscious control versus performance with automaticity.
Yeah, I think that's more the scientific side of things, I guess. Yeah.
The scientific,
Yeah.
the sciencey stuff.
Sciencey
Let's get
stuff.
into some list of questions.
Try and
Quick
get
fire.
through
We'll do a
as we
quick
can.
fire.
All right, let's get. All right. Why is taper such a mental roller coaster, and what are your tips to avoid derailment?
So we'll do it quickly because in tapering you feel. Can I swear?
Yeah.
You feel shit, and so we then interpret that emotion as some sort of information about how we're going to perform, and all the work that we've done in the past, even that's built lots of competence, we're feeling crappy, so we then use our feelings as a guide to whether we can perform. So we trust our feelings too much. We trust our levels of confidence, and that's why it can be a mental roller coaster.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received that you've personally used?
Can we come back to that one?
Yep.
Because I let my
All right.
brain sort of
Okay,
think about that one.
We can pass on that one. How can you train the mind to be able to keep running after it thinks it's at its max? I know we kind of touched on that, but just a quick tip.
So understanding when your brain, what's the stories your brain tells you when it's at its max. Understand those and diffuse from them using that. Like I like to use with my clients the personal nursery rhyme. What nursery rhyme is going to show up in that moment, and let's get used to it. I'm going to come back to that question. Now I thought of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
My favorite, the thing I like to use is the Zen koan of the wise man in the village. You ever heard of this? Okay. It's basically talking about just because a bad thing happens to you, we don't know that it's a bad thing. And the story goes that a kid gets a horse for their sort of 12th birthday, 14th birthday, and everyone in the village says, "How wonderful." But the wise man says, "We'll see." The kid's riding his horse one day and falls off and breaks his leg, and everyone in the village says, "How terrible." And the wise man says, "We'll see." The village or the country goes to war, and the kid can't be conscripted to war. And everyone in the village says, "How wonderful." And the wise man says, "We'll see, we'll see."
Next question. Why does a massive long run on the weekend get done, but 20 minutes of strength training get avoided?
Gets avoided.
Why does what?
So why does a massive long run on the weekend get done, but 20 minutes of strength work gets avoided?
You should ask the person who's smashing out the strength work and avoiding the running, and should get together and chat about why. But it's ultimately stuff we've spoken about here already.
What matters?
It's the discomfort of it's the lack of enjoyment or the way the gym makes you feel that we are not willing to sit with,
What you
even though it
consider
matters.
meaningful as well,
Yeah.
possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
God,
well, the other one's me.
Can you see them? Sorry, Ollie.
Hold on. I can click on it.
No, you can't because I
had
took
the
a screenshot.
Okay. Wait, what's the next one? Okay. Is swapping one addiction for another in ultra running healthy psychologically?
It's swapping one addiction for another. Okay, so, oh geez. Okay, as long as the addiction isn't harming you, sure.
Yeah, I often find people will talk about running and I see it as well. They use running as a way to maybe lose weight and do all those kinds of things, and then they get addicted to losing that weight. And it's a safe addiction, essentially. But yeah, I think that
the idea of addiction, the whole point of the word addiction is that you're not in control. So, as in you're not in control of your choices because you're being pushed around by your brain's desire to get a reward or remove a discomfort or distress, and so then your brain's you're conditioning yourself to get the reward through the addiction. So inherently, you're not in control of your actions. It feels like you don't have a choice.
Oh, geez,
that's what addiction
sometimes feels like running.
Yeah, of course. It feels like gym and stuff. It's really common. But so as long as it's not, as long as it's not unhealthy and it's not causing harm, then fine.
Yep.
But if it is causing harm, then I would seek some help.
What are some of the best or most powerful whys you've ever come across? Like,
Yep. The most. Oh, okay. It's usually something to do with family. Yeah. That's usually something that's really big. And then the really sort of the whys that a lot of athletes seem to have that's sort of similar but different. It's usually about the thing they fear. Is when you actually deep get into it, it's the thing they really want. So fearing of failure, for example, at the biggest stage, but actually what they really, one of their whys is to continue to challenge themselves against the very best in the world. That's the thing that sort of really drives them. It can be a big why.
Is
right?
that it,
really a sense of mastery? That's probably the underlying why.
Can that speak? I don't want to go negative, but can that slightly speak to a sense of a lack of self-worth if you're looking at performance to prop up how you may feel about yourself? That if you feel like if I win this thing, then I'm worthy.
I didn't say winning.
Oh.
But yes. So often you'll find the whys and the pain next to each other. Yeah, they're not usually too far ahead. Like there's usually something that we're getting, some really fundamental why, purpose, values that we're getting from whatever we're pursuing, and next to it is fear of failure or unworthiness or recognition because of lack of love, something like that. Yep. Usually they're close.
Yep. You got last one?
All right. We got last one. I did have another one. It was really long. Someone sent me, but I'll leave this one as the last one. So how can you tell when you're being a big baby versus when you have actually reached a limit?
I don't know how you can tell you're being a big baby. I would be very careful of the victim mindset, that external locus of control that can seep in. The woe is me. It's not fair, even if it's not. The thing about sport is there's a lot of it that's just a game of poker, right? And you get shitty cards sometimes, and you've still got to play those cards as best you possibly can because that's the game you're in. And what you don't want to do is look at your cards and get into the woe is me, this is a shit deck, I'm going to fold.
Yeah, I like that. Let's end on that one. So our tradition on the podcast
Hold on. We'll bring this one across the finish line.
Okay, we'll bring this one across the finish line. That's our tradition too, saying that. And I keep stuffing it up and not saying it. But we normally have our guests set a challenge for Ollie and I and our audience for the week that the podcast comes out. Uh-huh. So as our guest, we would love for you to set a challenge for us to be better by next week.
Okay. So let's start to cultivate a mindset. So I would like you to sit down, and I'd like to get 3 or 4 really important things to you this week. Not goals, but the way you can have goals, but the way you want to. I'm getting a bit of a cramp. Hold on. The way you want to live your life, what's important to you, any particular values you want to bring to life this week. I want you to write them down. Okay.
Yep.
So it can be goals, priorities, behaviors, and values you want to bring to life. Yep. Okay. Then I want you to acknowledge in doing that what tough stuff's going to show up, what uncomfortable private experience is going to pop up for you in doing those things. And if you don't have any of them, then put something in the important that is going to show that, because we're going to grow. You can't have growth without pain. So let's talk a little bit about what's the uncomfortable thing. Then I want you to do, once you put that down, so it's got to be internal feeling, right? Then I want you to go, okay, well, if I get caught up in that feeling, what is my typical action? What's my typical reaction to that? And you're going to write that down. And then you're going to write, what is the positive committed action or actions that I'm going to do that's going to bring, it's going to be specific, that's going to bring these values, my mindset, what's important to life. What am I actually going to do? It's like a bit of goals, basically, but actually actionable things. That's what I'd like you to do. And if you're going to do it really well for the whole week, you do the mindset piece, you do what's important, but you just do it for today. What's important today? How am I going to show up today? What am I going to do? What's important to me today? What's going to show up that's hard? How might I react? And what the actions are going to do. I want you to do that every single day for a week.
Yep. I really like that.
Thank you.
And I'll probably just continue doing something like that, even if it's a longer term goal.
I'll send you a sheet to
beautiful.
work through. Yep.
100%.
On that.
Well, thank you so much for being on.
Pleasure.
Daniel, it has been an absolute eye-opener for both of us. So
I was so fascinated by everything you said.
Yeah.
Well, it's great. Yeah, it was good fun.
Thank you.
Cheers,
thank
guys.
you.
Fist bumps.
Thank you.
This is life just waiting for ya.